Welcome to another episode of The Watchdog here with Lowkey on Mint Press. As you know, we are a purely independent form of media, so we require all the support we can possibly get from you. We ask that you like, share and subscribe on this video, but also that you support us on Patreon if you are able to. Now, today we are joined by someone who has revolutionized, along with many others, revolutionized pro-Palestinian activism in this country. I'm talking about none other than co-founder of Palestine Action, Huda Amori. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on.
Thanks. And so to start with, what I want to ask you, just so you can relay for our audience, what is Palestine Action? And what exactly has it achieved in this country when it comes to taking on the Israeli war machine?
So Palestine Action is a direct action network that was set up in July 2020. And it was set up with the aim of taking direct action to shut down Israel's largest arms firm, Elbit Systems, and to end overall British complicity with the colonization of Palestine. And since we launched, we've been set on taking various types of direct action against Elbit's numerous sites in Britain. And when we started off the campaign, there were actually 10 Elbit sites in this country. They had 5 factories, 2 offices, and they operated out of 3 Royal Air Force bases. We started off by targeting their London headquarters when a few of us would storm in and spray paint the site. We moved on to targeting their arms factories where the production of the weapons were being made, as that was a crucial part of disrupting their supply chain in this country. And we would take various types of actions and still do to this day, which involved climbing onto the roof of these factories. It involved breaking into these factories at times. It involved blockading the gates. And our actions are always aimed at disrupting our target, which is Elbit Systems, and making it impossible for them to continue to operate. And since our launch, we've seen sustained direct action against these targets, which has made it very difficult for Elbit to maintain their premises across Britain, because in between having actionists target their facilities and shutting them down, sometimes for weeks on end, because when there's significant damage, they have to shut down for repairs, etc. In between being shut down directly, having to pay extra costs to fix up their premises after Palestine Action has been there, having to increase their costs on security, we have made their profits, we have shrunken their profits. And this has forced them, alongside community mobilization in Oldham, to leave their Oldham site and to sell it at a massive loss. That happened at the start of last year. In the summer of last year, they were forced to abandon their London headquarters. And at the end of last year, they were kicked out of over £218 million worth of contracts with the Ministry of Defence. So that's our campaign to date, but we are adamant on continuing and only growing the campaign until we shut down all of Elbit sites in this country.
And just to be clear, how important is Elbit Systems as a company to Israel's violence?
Well, Elbit Systems was born out of a necessity to maintain this violence over the Palestinian people. It was actually formed in 1966. And part of the reason it was created was in order to capitalize and maximize on this need to dominate, oppress, and ethnically cleanse the Palestinian people so they would profit from the destruction of Palestine. And they're doing the same model to this very day, where they will develop weapons on the Palestinians, use it against the Palestinians, and then market them as battle-tested and export them across the world. So this is a company whose whole business model is built on the destruction of Palestine. This has given them the opportunity to expand to places like Britain. And we know this is due to the fact that Britain and Israel have been allies since day one. And Britain's actually been complicit in the colonization of Palestine since prior to 1948, in 1917, when Britain basically signed away the land of Palestine, and now they welcome in Elbit's arms factories in this country. So there is a moral duty and obligation to take action against these factories here. But Elbit symbolizes the profiteering and the continuation of the developing weapons on Palestinians, the surveillance that is used against the Palestinian people. And essentially, without a military and without people providing the weapons, there would be no military occupation. So really, Elbit is at the crux of this. And that's also the reason that if you are building weapons here to be sent back to Israel to be used against Palestinians, or you are a customer of weapons that have been developed on the Palestinian people, then you are just as guilty. For example, the British Ministry of Defence buy many of these weapons that have been after they have been used and developed on Palestinians, which only continues to encourage the further developing of weapons, the further use of weapons on Palestinians, and to continue the occupation, because the British Ministry of Defence is getting these tested weapons and Elbit continues to profit, and this cycle of violence just continues to benefit the oppressors and work against the oppressed.
And could you just tell us what else Elbit has been involved in across the years? You know, we know that it was also instrumental in developing the tech military industry in apartheid South Africa, as relatively primitive as it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Elbit used the Palestinians as a way to develop their weapons, but essentially the world of oppressive regimes is its market. And so we have seen that many of for example, the military drones that we see in Gaza, and these are flying above the heads of people in Gaza all of the time, constantly watching their every move. Many of these drones can also be armed with missiles. And Elbit is actually a pioneer in the drone market, essentially because it needed to maintain and entrench the occupation and apartheid regime over the Palestinian people, including in Gaza. And so we've seen how these drones have brought turmoil to the people of Gaza and are used as a weapon against them. And their customers range from being the British military, who used the same drones, just a different name, called the Watchkeeper in Afghanistan and Iraq. We know other weapons have been also used in Palestine first, made by Elbit, and used against the people of Afghanistan and Iraq. We know that India is the largest importer of arms from Israel. They import about 50% of Israel's weapons exports, which means that, again, they're using, and we know that these weapons are often being used against the occupied people of Kashmir. Another example is the apartheid wall in Palestine, which they built essentially to steal more land from the Palestinian people and keep them divided from their own communities. But this land, this wall, the electronics on this wall were actually, because they could demonstrate how well it worked against the Palestinians, Elbit won the contract to build the same wall between the US and Mexico, was infamously known as Trump's Wall. So we can see how this laboratory of that Palestine is being used as, it demonstrates how Palestine is so crucial to the struggle against imperialism, that many of the weaponry and surveillance that starts there is then slowly being exported to other places, even to be used against people in the imperial core. Now, of course, it would be in no way on the same level as to those who are imperialized and colonized, such as the Palestinians. But we know that the British police force have been trialing Elbit's drones because they want to phase out helicopters and they want to bring in more drones to surveil all of us. We know that in Glasgow, the Glasgow Council bought these drones, not the drones, the CCTV that from an Elbit subsidiary, again, after it was used to blackmail Palestinians, and now that's being used in Scotland. So a lot of this surveillance is starting off in one place and ending up here. But for us, it's crucial to take action, not to protect ourselves, but to use our privilege from where we are in a country like Britain, which has been so pivotal to enabling the colonization of Palestine, and also where Elbit is very vulnerable because of the privilege that we have to take direct action against them. And now we have to expose those vulnerabilities, but act upon them and stop them from operating in this country. And we have proven as Palestine Action that that can be done, but it's for everyone else to join us to prove that we are capable as a movement in this country to get rid of all of Elbit's factories and offices in this country.
Now, Huda, if you can just break down for us how important the communities around the factories have been in the victories that have been had, whether that is Oldham or Leicester. What kind of role has community played in this story?
So in Oldham, we have seen support from the community from even before Palestine Action. This involved numerous local groups which was set up, I believe in 2017, 2018, who would provide information to locals, who would protest against the site. And when we launched Palestine Action, after a certain amount of time, every time there was an action, you would see support from the locals. And, they would be out there supporting the action as it was happening. They would be out there at the police station waiting for the activists to be released from the police station. And they continued to be there at their numerous court dates, even after the factory is closed. But the slightly disturbing thing, which works as a massive advantage to us, is the fact that Elbit has the audacity to place these factories in places which have a community which is instinctively going to oppose the existence of that factory there. So, for example, in Oldham, there is a very large Kashmiri community and people of all different backgrounds who come from countries or have family in countries that are affected by Elbit's weapons directly. We see the same thing in Leicester. In Leicester, in May 2021, this was during the bombing of Gaza, 4 people from Palestine Action scaled onto the roof of the Elbit factory in Leicester. And within a couple of hours, the police came and they asked the fire service to remove the activists from the roof, and they refused and put out a statement from the Fire Brigades Union about how they stand in solidarity with Palestine. But at the same time, there were hundreds mobilizing from the local community who were there day in, day out for 6 days in total. And when the police attempted to arrest the actionists on the roof, they came out and would actually barricade the gates, faced arrest themselves, even just to throw bottles of water to the activists on the roof when they were refused it from the police. And they would build barricades and they blocked the police from arresting these activists for around 8 hours. And so we could see the strength in solidarity that that community has with the Palestinian people, and that people are disgusted and outraged by the fact that these factories exist in the first place. Once you expose it, and this is the thing about taking direct action, is not only are you directly disrupting the target, but in the process, you are exposing the fact that these factories exist there in the first place. Because normally they can just hide in plain sight. They look like a normal factory building. However, when you have activists on the roof exposing what the factory is, it's pretty hard to miss that. And since then, the community in Leicester has been adamant on getting rid of their local Israeli arms factory. We've been invited to speak at their different protests and various other events to expose this factory and what it's doing further. And we look forward to joining them for May the 1st, when we're going to lay siege to the Leicester Israeli weapons factory.
And just before we get to that question of Leicester and May the 1st, I just wanted to ask you, in cases where people have gone before a jury, what has been the response of, because people are getting arrested after these actions, over 250 people. However, the vast majority of those court cases are ending in not guilty, acquittal. There's a sort of a range of how those court cases are ending generally. But some of the responses from the juries on these cases have been quite striking. Could you tell us how the jury has responded, particularly in a case in London?
Yes, so we had our first Crown Court case at the end of last year. And that was actually, I think, over 2 years, nearly 2 years after we started Palestine Action, because we have a number of Crown Court cases that we expected to have back in 2021, but there has been significant delays in these court cases. And we had our first one in November at the end of last year, and that was relating to an action at the London headquarters, which is now closed down, where activists threw red paint across the site and created a river of red paint to symbolise the bloodshed from their former offices. And they were all charged with conspiracy to commit criminal damage. And throughout the trial, all of the defendants spoke about Elbit's crimes, what they are complicit in, about the plight of the Palestinian people. And at the end of the trial, it took 1 hour, which I think is around the minimum time you can take as a jury to deliberate, for them to come back, the jury, and unanimously say that they were all not guilty. And not only did they do this, they actually proceeded to thank the activists for taking the actions that they did, and some even blew kisses to thank the activists from the jury, which was incredible to see, and just shows how the general public, these are 12 members of the public who are pulled together to deliberate in a context where the people taking action against Israel, these Israeli arms factories, are the ones being posed as supposedly the criminals in this context. And you leave that knowing that the jury are thanking you for taking that action that you did is quite incredible to see, and just proves the point that people know that Elbit is the guilty party in these cases, not the activists who take action against them. And so, we continue to look forward to be able to prove this in further Crown Court cases, which we will have numerous throughout the year. But also what we're seeing in these cases is a desperation from Elbit to deny who they are. In that London case, for example, halfway through the trial, Elbit had a note taker in the room. They do this quite often. They're spending, hundreds of pounds a day for someone to sit there and take notes. And they were unhappy with the fact that the CPS agreed that Elbit was an arms company who supplied drones which are used against the Palestinian people. This is, basically from Elbit's own website. And they actually had to intervene and try and tell the CPS that they cannot say this, of which they took back halfway through the trial. They claimed that they can no longer say Elbit is an arms company, which, to be honest, it's ridiculous and it's laughable. And I think people can see straight through that. And also it shows how desperate Elbit are to not win these cases, because it proves that they have no legal protection in this country. But either way, for us as people in Palestine Action, we don't go to court. We go to court standing as the accusers and not the accused. And either way, we know that history will vindicate us, and that they have no protection in this country anyway, because we're not going to stop until they're closed down.
Fantastic. And just to ask you then, what is the significance of this action on May the 1st? And why should people make their way down to Leicester on May the 1st to be part of it?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, we have taken action before against Leicester's Israeli weapons factory. We have, at this point in time, shut down 2 of Elbit's sites in this country and kicked them out of hundreds of millions of pounds worth of contracts with the Ministry of Defence. And our aim is to close down the rest of Elbit's sites as soon as possible. So from May the 1st, we're calling on everyone to join us, to lay siege to this factory, which will involve hundreds, if not thousands of us, staying put day and night refusing to leave until Elbit does, shutting down that site repeatedly and making it possible for them to operate as a company anymore in Leicester. And people may have seen the type of actions that we've done before and supported from the sidelines. This is a way for everyone to join the front lines in getting rid of the next Israeli arms factory in this country before we move on to close down the rest. So we encourage everyone to join us. You can find out more information on palestineaction.org/siege and to get down to that site and help us all shut Elbit down sooner rather than later.
Well, there we have it from Huda and Palestine Action, who have made history already in this country and have achieved in a very short space of time things that people would work many decades to achieve in their own countries. So we salute Palestine Action always, and we hope that everybody who is watching this will be able to make it down to Leicester on the 1st of May. Thank you very much for joining us today, Huda.
Thank you.